Good morning, everyone. So nice to see you here. I'm Sara Bergamaschi from Strategic Advocacy for Human Rights, or SAHR as we call it. SAHR works alongside women and gender diverse human rights defenders around the world, especially those navigating criminalization, violence, and systems that too often fail to protect them. Through our fellowship program, we accompany advocates who are already doing the work, not to speak for them, but to help make their knowledge visible, credible, and harder to ignore. The conversation today grows directly from this work, and you see so much of what is said about sex work happens without sex workers. And we are really happy today to be having this conversation, to have an invitation today to listen differently, because it's not about a debate. It's not about morality or ideology. It's about power. It's about safety and dignity. And we're holding the space through a rights-based sex workers-led lens today, recognizing sex workers as experts, political actors, and rights holders. So I'm honored today to be joined by three powerful voices. Constance Mathe, a sex worker and sex worker advocate and coordinator of the Asijiki Coalition in South Africa, and our SAHR Fellow, whose work centers sex worker-led organizing and justice. And then we have Natasha Lewis, a lawyer based in New Zealand, working at the intersection of human rights policy and advocacy with a strong grounding in gender equality and feminist studies. Over the past year, Natasha has been with us, an incredible mentor to Connie through the Sahar Fellowship Program, offering not only legal insight, but deep care, generosity, and political clarity. And then I'm very excited to welcome Precious, a sex worker rights advocate from Zimbabwe, speaking from the front line of the reality of criminalization and community resistance, working on behalf of our wonderful organization called Spring of Life Zimbabwe. So thank you for listening slowly, openly, and with curiosity. And let's begin together. I like to pass the mic to our amazing speakers.
Thank you.
Connie, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. Uh, Hi, everyone, and morning to my colleagues out there. My name is Constance Mathe. I am the national coordinator for the Coalition of the Decriminalisation of Sex Work, and as a profession, I am a sex worker. I am a SHR fellow, which is the most important thing. And during my fellow journey, it's been amazing. And to have this discussion today, it's been one of my dreams. And I'm so happy and I'm so excited to share my thoughts and share my stories for today. And yeah,
Hello, Precious. Thank you for being with us. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, the viewers and listeners. My name is Precious Msindo. I'm the program's coordinator at Springs of Life and also the director. I'm just the national coordinator, no one to direct. It's unfortunate that I was limited to write there. I don't like to call myself the director. I'm just coordinating my fellow sex workers. Um, I work with Springs of Life Zimbabwe. It's a sex worker led organization that is operating here in Zimbabwe. And I'm happy to be here with my fellow speakers. I'm here to learn and share my experiences as a sex worker here in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
And then Natasha. Hello to New Zealand.
Kia ora koutou, wahine mā, wahine toa. Wahine toa means strong women, powerful women in Te Reo Māori. So I'm Natasha, been very honoured to spend the past year as a mentor through Strategic Advocacy for Human Rights, SAHR, learning from Constance Mathe, and her colleagues through the Asijiki Coalition for Decriminalising Sex Work, as well as SWEAT, the Sex Worker Education and Advocacy Task Force in South Africa. So I'm a human rights lawyer by training and a policy and advocacy specialist based in Tamaki Makaurau in Auckland. So I'm just really delighted to learn from you all, including yourselves, Precious and Sara. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And so I like to jump right into it and ask Connie, when you reflect about your fellowship with SAHR, what stands out most about the project for you? Where did you feel most held or supported? And from where you sit, what is one thing people consistently misunderstand about sex work in your community?
Right. Being a fellow at SHR, it was amazing journey. At first, when I applied, I wasn't sure because of the stigma and criminalization in South Africa and globally. I wasn't sure whether I was going to be accepted in this fellowship. Um, and when I look at around and read and go deeper, and I thought like that is too academic. But I told myself like I love challenges. Let me challenge myself and see if I can. If I don't get it, it's fine. It's okay. I said, let me be not intimidated otherwise by other women. I am a strong woman myself. I can do this. And then when I received a call from Sarah for the first time, it was like a dream come true. But I was like, even if I do interview, it's okay. It's fine. If I don't get it, it's okay. But at least they recognize me. That was the most important thing I was happy about. And then when I received the second one, and I was like, it's happening. I'm getting it. I was so convinced that I'm getting this fellowship. And then when they say officially email, I screamed. I ran to my director, Emily, and I'm like, Emily, I got it. Remember, I told you I applied. And, and it was really, that's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah. And then the next thing I had to tell my fellow sisters, like, sisters, we are somewhere in the world and our voices is going to be heard. And everybody was so excited for me. And then I was so excited. My judgmental thinking that it's an academic space, I found out that that's not what is happening. The people who work there, they might have the qualifications, but the people that I see and I speak and I work with, they are totally different. They are kind of the people, all the SAHR team, they are kind of the people that understand and have patience and open the ears to learn. The other most beautiful thing about my journey is I can say this is the best journey that I have taken and the best thing that have happened in a fellowship. I have done some fellowship before, but this is amazing because I was given individual mentor, and the mentor, she's not just a mentor. Yeah. The first time when I met her, I thought that will she understand the sex workers' complicit issues? And most of the people, they are more moralistic. And I'm like, hey, she haven't worked with us. She'll never understand this. But the way she's more sensitized about the woman issue, it was like she has been working with us for years and years. The time we started to communicate, engage with each other, it was just amazing. I love this fellowship because I was given an individual mentor, not the fellowship. Most of the times that I have done before, it's like you are a fellow, find out yourself, figure out what you're going to do. And they may take us to a traveling place where I don't have to ask you, we don't have to do a research. You just enter in a flight and travel, and you are there alone. You must know for you to pass this fellowship and to learn, you have to learn in a hard way. But this fellowship was more understanding in the less privileged women, in the women that are left behind, the women that are facing stigma and discrimination. How do we uplift these women? By bringing a mentor in this fellowship, it have helped me. Even there is a question that I cannot ask in public, I can go secretly to her, and she's always willing to go extra miles and answer all my questions. Tasha, she have been amazing mentor. And apart from that, she go extra miles that she makes me to connect with my sisters that I can say I haven't seen them for the past 15 years, but she reconnected me to my sisters. As I'm speaking, I'm proudly to say I'll be visiting New Zealand this next month on March, throughout this fellowship, throughout my mentor who made it possible for me, even though she didn't step and make it possible for me, and then she ran it herself. She stepped back and said, Connie, this is your platform, take over your platform. And she's assisting me at the behind, which is a true leader, a true woman who stand by other women with a sincerity heart, always make sure that she doesn't overstep her boundaries, but she rather make you grow. So this is what this fellowship have teach me. She have make me grow. She have make me to stand as a leader and stand on my grounds. She have guided me in a professional academic way as well, to teach me this is how you negotiate things, this is how you talk to people. She have given me that other skill that I didn't have. Otherwise, I might have a skill here in South Africa, but dealing with the international level people, she have kind of guided me again another skill that I did not have. I'm always doing my things as an activist, demanding, fighting, and not in a polite way, but she have made me to realize that sometimes we need to come down and communicate. So I have grown a lot of a skill. And then having my director, I remember during my report launch when they ask you, who's the director of SAHR? I'm like, I think it's Sara. But I've been in this fellowship for very long. It makes me even to forget there is positions existing in the fellowship. It makes me to see I found sisters. Even my director was like, in this fellowship, she's just like a sister. Even when I'm in trouble, I call her and like, Sarah, please, can you understand? She's always understanding. She's always understanding and say, Connie, this is what we have to do. Is it make you happy? Always check on me and make sure that it's all about me. No one is claiming my space. For me to change the world and change the people, it's me speaking and telling my own story. And at SAHR, I'm given that platform. I'm given that crown for me to take over and speak and share my own story.
Thanks so much, Connie. Really, so touching, so moving. I'll be missing you when the project is over, but we're always going to be connecting through the communities and sisterhood, as you say.
Yes.
Yeah, Precious. So I like to ask you a few things too. It would be very interesting for us to know, how does criminalization show up in the everyday realities of sex workers context, and what feels most urgent for people to understand right now? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry today I'm facing a lot of challenges with my network. Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah, for the question. So currently here in Zimbabwe, criminalization is our everyday life. So we are living in a very
Yeah, maybe connection issues. It happens a lot. We can give it a minute. Otherwise, I could move to the question for Natasha, because it seems if the screen is frozen, maybe she's gonna have to jump back in and try again. So maybe we do this. Maybe Natasha, you could quickly answer one question, and then when Precious comes back in, then
Yeah,
she can continue.
perfect. Absolutely. Yep.
So we would love to know from you what contrasts stand out when you compare a criminalized context with decriminalized ones, for example, in New Zealand or in the world. Like, what's something interesting for you that stands out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, I have to say, like as Connie outlined at the start, and I'm sure Precious will as well, I don't have lived experience and lived expertise in this space. So I'm a feminist human rights lawyer, but I haven't been a sex worker myself. And so what I've learned is really from Connie, from her colleagues at the Asijiki Coalition and Sweat, but also from the Aotearoa Sex Workers Collective, formerly known as the New Zealand Prostitutes Collective, a really fantastic organization, Connie's sisters, as she said, who really advocated through leaders like Dame Catherine Healy and her colleagues. They advocated for decades for sex work to be decriminalized in New Zealand. So sort of learning from them, basically, that in New Zealand, since the Prostitution Reform Act, which was passed in 2003, so it's quite a while ago now, this is the 23rd year of the law, decrim here has allowed sex workers to work more safely. So there has been studies and research with sex workers in New Zealand showing that they have more ability to refuse clients for any reason that's protected under law. They can report violence without fear of police retaliation. So there has been an improvement, not always, and it's not perfect, but there have been an improvements for sex workers of their relationships with police in particular, including for those who are street-based. Whereas in South Africa, and Connie can speak more to this, but in contexts where sex work is still criminalized, sex workers have ongoing police harassment, threats of arrest, daily human rights violations, and there's no pathway for recourse and for justice. The second, really quickly, are the human rights and constitutional protections. Now, I have to really give shout outs to the South African Constitution because I studied it at law school. It's beautifully written. And the government in South Africa actually pledged to pursue decriminalization back in 2022. So Connie and her colleagues are pushing for that, to uphold the South African Constitution in practice. But while that progress is stalled, there's a lot of, human rights violations actually happening in practice, and it's too much of a theory. Whereas the Prostitution Reform Act in New Zealand recognizes sex work as legitimate work. It puts it under the framework of employment relations law. And once you move it from being criminalized in a criminal justice system into the employment space, you open up other human rights protections like health and social services. So I think that means that the institutions become what they should be, which is partners in accountability. They're not threats. They're not punitive, trying to punish sex workers and communities, but they're actually accountable so that when sex workers are engaged in work, they are protected just like any other worker. When they do have, unfortunately it still happens, rights violated, or they experience harm and experience abuse, the police need to get into action to protect them and support them. Same with the courts, same with our Employment Relations Authority, employment courts, disputes tribunals, human rights tribunals. They are there to protect and support the rights of sex workers as with all other workers. And the ministries and government departments here, which Connie can talk more about. She's going to visit some of them that work directly with the Aotearoa Sex Workers Collective here in New Zealand and other organizations. They are partners in accountability. So I think for me, having a law that decriminalizes sex work puts us on the path towards protecting human rights, having institutional accountability in government, having them be accountability partners as government agencies, and also paves the path for sex workers to lead their own journeys and to have safe working environments. And that's what's really needed in countries where we're still fighting for decrim. Thanks.
Thank you, Natasha. That's really interesting and great analysis. And connecting this to also Connie reality, I wanted to ask you, how does criminalization intersect with gender, poverty, migration, and or policing in the cases that you work on in your community in South Africa?
Actually, it affects the females mostly. It seems like people do not understand that the sex worker industry is a very big and a broad and a diverse industry with all genders. But what are the most people who are targeted in terms of arrest during the arrest is the Black female sex workers are the one that are the most targeted one. Many people do not believe that other genders, unless the other genders come out and say, we are here as sex workers and we exist. That's when people realize that there is other genders. So the policy and the law that it works, most of the people that face violence, as I mentioned, is the Black female sex workers, because most of them, they work on the street. Most of them, they work on the street. They are street-based sex workers. So during the street, there is no safety. Any client that picks a woman, they take them in a danger places. Some of them, there is bad and good clients. But people take advantage of that situation because there is no safety environment. There is no protections. For example, I'll give you an example about a big case that happened. A sex worker was killed by a most famous artist, Zweleti Mthethwa. And if the CCTV camera didn't caught Zweleti Mthethwa, there wouldn't been an evidence. It's only that it happened in an area that the CCTV cameras are there, they exist, right? So it happens that time Nokpila was killed, brutally murdered by Zweleti Mthethwa. And he is an artist and he's earning, he's driving a Porsche, he has the whole money. He come and kill a poor woman standing in her corner, trying to make money for your mother. And what happened? Because she is a poor Black woman, they went back to her parents during the arrest of Mthethwa. Mthethwa reach out to Nokpila's mother and say, listen, I'll pay you 100,000. You just shut up and just drop the case, and then there is 100,000. It's not about the 100,000 here. It's about a human being who just died. And then he mentioned that your doctor, she was just a sex worker, which means she wasn't a human being. She was just a thing that can be kicked and kicked and killed at the same time. And 100,000 is a lot of money for you. But the 100,000 won't gonna bring Nokpila back. Won't gonna bring Nokpila. Nokpila's life is gone and it's gone for good. 100,000, you can eat it in 2 days and it's finished. This is how the gender perceives the women in the society, that a woman can be just be killed and then we silence the family because we are rich, we have driving Porsche, we have got money, and this is what happened. And I love the judge that judged the case, Judge Goliath, came straight and said, no, I'd rather stand with the sex workers this time. I'm sentencing you 25 years in prison. You are gone with your money. They tried to repeal. They couldn't succeed. The judge said, I still stand on my ground. You are sentenced. And the painful part of it, she had it, he have a doctor, 21 years, same age with no pillar. But you can kill someone's child. You protect your own children. Now, when we talk about the criminalization, it have stripped a dignity of a sex worker. The criminalization, it have made sex workers more vulnerable. You don't have a right. It have highlighted you to be in a box where you live in a society where you are not regarded as a human being.
So, Connie, I have another question to ask you. This is coming from Sara, so she sent it through in the chat because I think there are some tech issues. So she wants to talk now about shifting from the laws on paper to how we're seeing power working in practice. So this is a question for you, which I think will be really interesting to hear your answer on. Where do laws claiming to protect sex workers fail in practice? So who is treated as credible and who is dismissed within our legal and institutional systems? So maybe looking at the Nordic model and some of those other protective models.
Yes. So first of all, as you mentioned earlier, I would like to say in South Africa, we have got a very beautiful constitution. We have got a beautiful constitution that if people they have been following that constitution, we wouldn't be seated with the criminalization in the first place. Right. But just because there is people who judge this matter or who look at the sex worker in a moral eye, not following the constitution, not thinking that this is a human rights issue, it's not a moral issue. That's why we are seated with this problematic in South Africa. The people who claims to be protecting, there is laws in place that can protect sex workers. Right. If you go to the constitution, you'll find out that each and every person as a South African citizen have the human rights. But the people in power, especially the law enforcement agents, are the so problematic. They take away those power. And what I have found out with the law enforcement agencies, it's not only in South Africa. It's an issue that is happening globally. Yeah. Many movements have come out crying with the law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
So they take those laws and they create their own laws and use their petty laws to arrest sex workers.
Yeah. So just building on that, there was a question that Sara had as well. How do the police, the courts, and the social services, welfare agencies, employment, health, social welfare, how do they shape experiences of safety or harm? And what happens when sex workers try to report abuse and violence that they face?
Right. Once you face let's say you are being raped, and then you went to the police station and say, I'm being raped, and this is what is happening. So when you first thing, you rush to the police station asking for protection. And what happens to the police station? They say, no. Some police, they laugh at you, you become a laughing stock, and they say, you caused it. What were you doing outside at night? Why are you standing in that street? People rape. There is criminals. There is one police officer who said, I'm also scared I'm also scared to go in the street as a police officer. supposed to protect the country, you are telling me you are scared to go in the street to arrest the criminals. Then, which means your case is not going anyway. And then sometimes they just tell you, go and see a doctor. And then you get a document from the doctor. What do they call it? I forgot the name. And then after
Do
the
you get a
doctor
certificate, like a medical certificate from the doctor?
yes, to show
Yeah.
that you are raped. And then they said, go and fetch it to the doctor. And then you go to the doctor, and then the doctor will do it and examine you and do everything, and then you have to go back. Now think, this is happening at night. No one is escorting you. We are
Yeah.
living in a dangerous society. You are going alone, coming from police station, no help, going to see a doctor, it's money. If you want
Yeah.
emergency thing, you have to pay for it. But
Oh,
if you
okay.
want to
Yeah.
use the public hospital, they will tell you that come after a certain day, come after a certain day, because we work with the bookings. So which means you'll go home and take shower. Now the evidence is gone. You don't
Yeah.
have evidence. At the end of the day, the police can't help. Instead,
No,
if I call, they say, let's go and see where you're at. Let's follow did you see the number registration? They take a case, emergency, and start taking the case. No.
that's not
Or
prioritized.
else they will ask you, what are you doing there? And then they said, if you don't want me to arrest me, give a certain money.
Yeah.
Because you are a sex worker. So if you don't want to be arrested, give me. There is a corruption that pays. Sometimes when they caught you in the act with a client, they arrest you, and then the client pays you as a black poor woman who doesn't have money, and then you go to prison. In that prison system, you stay inside the cell. Let's say they arrest you in weekend. You stay the whole weekend. There is poor service inside the prison. Sometimes
Yeah.
they refuse you to make a phone call. For those who are taking medication, ARVs, sugar, diabetes, whatever, you default your medication in that weekend. And
Yeah.
then you stay the whole weekend in that cell. You cannot call your lawyer. You cannot call your family. You
It's
have
very
nobody.
isolating.
The cells are very dirty. Cells
Yeah.
are very dirty.
So
And the
unhygienic.
blankets are extremely dirty. You are
Mm.
given a 2 slices of bread for dinner. And
Oh,
that's the fruit and the one fruit. And then you stayed there. And then you appear in the morning in the magistrate court.
yeah. No, it's very stigmatizing. That's yeah. It's really, powerful and very, very harrowing to hear what people are facing. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to the next set of questions, Connie, because I think this conversation by you it's really rich, and I'm glad we're capturing it. So right now we're thinking about how stories, how narratives can shape our policy outcomes. So I'm just really going to briefly talk about some of the dominant narratives that have distorted the public understanding of sex work. And I have to also again acknowledge the Aotearoa Sex Workers Collective, because they've led so much of challenging the narratives, and they continue to do so every day. So these are some of the ones I've learned from them that are still, and I have to, check myself as well. And what have I digested from these narratives, and always question our biases. So the first is, these still persist in New Zealand. And like I said, we've had the Prostitution Reform Act this year as the 23rd anniversary of that law, so it's almost a quarter of a century old. Since 2003, we still have these narratives. The first one is that sex work is inherently harmful. So that is sort of the argument that in itself, it's inherently harmful, even though it is, one of the oldest professions in the world. There are some calls from some advocates to look at the Nordic model, even though there's so much evidence that that leads to increased harm and abuse for women, reduced access to justice for sex workers, and it's still quite powerful in popular opinion. The second, the rescue narrative, the idea that sex workers need saving, inflated claims about trafficking rates of sex workers in New Zealand, when there are separate issues around trafficking and exploitation, particularly for migrant workers in New Zealand, but that is a separate issue, and it reduces sex workers, to passive characters. They're not agents in their own lives, and that really sidelines sex worker voices and advocacy. So I think that remains quite harmful in New Zealand. The third, the moral panic about visibility, the fact that we have visible, dignified sex work in New Zealand as a recognized job that's protected under our employment laws, created sort of a moral panic in New Zealand that still exists today. But actually, we're almost 23 years in, and we hopefully have a better environment for sex workers and reduced harm for them, as well as more dignity and empowerment for sex workers and their advocates and supporters. And finally, I think this is probably the most harmful that still remains. There is a really flat and one-dimensional public narrative. So sex workers in New Zealand, the dominant image is that they're young, they're white, cisgender, heterosexual women, they're vulnerable, they might be experiencing issues with mental health and addiction, particularly drug use, they might be experiencing homelessness. But the actual facts, and while that is some people's lived reality, the industry is very diverse. There are Māori, Pacific sex workers, migrant sex workers. I'm from a migrant community, and we never discuss that within our community, and from the Indian community. There are sex workers from Asian, Indian, African, Middle Eastern, all kinds of communities. Transgender sex workers, rainbow sex workers, and they all experience different treatment in New Zealand, particularly the lack of support that is still in our law for migrant sex workers who don't have protections for their visa and to protect them from exploitation. So this means that the narrative really gets written for the stereotype in people's minds, and it doesn't show the diversity of our communities, because sex workers reflect our communities. So I think that there's a real need to shift that. And actually, your upcoming visit to New Zealand, Connie, I think will be a powerful part of shifting that. And hopefully some of the allyship that you've already started to build. I mean, you've spoken on panels and at conferences, online events with, the Aotearoa Sex Workers Collective, with advocates like Tim Barnett from the Labour Party in New Zealand. So I'm just, really amazed to see how you can continue shifting the narrative with your visit. So I've got a question here for you around the, stories and narratives. How do these rescue narratives affect real lives on the ground? And also, what counter narratives are coming from movements like the Asijiki Coalition that, need to be more visible? Oh, you're on mute, Connie. Sorry.
Sorry about that. And
Okay.
how this narrative they affect the sex workers on the ground. What people they seem to forget is that there is a narrative that, as we are advocating for decriminalization of sex work, there is three main narratives that people they think it will affect the country, right? The first one, the narrative is around bringing underage on board. And then the second one is to open the doors for trafficking. And then the third one, they said it's not a human rights issue, this is a moral issue. So these are the three narratives that are the major problematic in South Africa. So I will touch on underage issue. All these narrative, people forgot that before anything, being a sex worker, you are a mother. You have children. The reason make a choice to choose and do this profession is because of your children. You want to give your children better life, a good life. So you are not there to encourage the children. Because if the industry is still criminalized, all the dangers in the industry will affect the kids that are upcoming. But rather to understand that the decriminalization I'm calling for, I'm advocating for, is for the future. As these children are young, they will join the industry, some of them. It will be so sad to find them going the same step their mothers they've gone through.
Mm.
So as we are still strong as the leaders, it's rather we advocate for decriminalization and make the environment more safety and the laws to recognize and protect those who are in the industry so that the upcoming sex workers, they'll find the industry smoothly accessible, protected. So these narratives, they don't just harm the people. They harm the children. They don't just harm the sex workers. They harm the children of the sex workers.
Yeah.
People,
And they
they
harm
call the children of
communities.
sex workers. Yes. Your children, they'll be called names. They will be deprived the access in certain things. I
Yeah.
remember my friend, she bought a pen for a child. They say, your mother, and there is a narrative that sex workers don't make money. They
Mm.
cannot afford anything. They are poor women. Every
Mm.
time there is this picture of a poor, if you want to identify a poor woman, you just bring
Yeah.
a sex worker. She is a
Yeah.
poor woman, which is not true. People do not
No.
understand. Girls are driving cars, are living their luxury life. They are living the good life. They are going to
Mm-hmm.
school, educated, and studying for their lives
Yep.
using the sex work money.
Yep.
You know, because
Yeah.
I'm just not talking. I'm talking because I'm being an example.
Yeah. Definitely. So
You understand?
I've got a question for you now, Connie, because we're gonna go into the closing and some pathways forward. So I just want to hear from you because there's so much richness in what you're sharing, and so I'm gonna ask, you know, what would a rights-based approach you think look like in practice? You know, when you're coming to New Zealand, what are some of the things you hope to see, you're excited to see, that hopefully there is the beginnings of a human rights-based approach. It's not perfect and our law still needs improvement, but what would it look like in practice to you?
The most important thing I would love to see, I would love to see the sex worker organizing. How did they manage
Yeah,
to still organize and exist post decree?
totally. Yeah,
What, yeah, what are the, even though they are struggling in labor
yeah,
law, because one thing I would like to share right now, I will take this opportunity and share where we are currently as South African, the
yes,
sex worker movement. We are
yeah,
now in a process of decriminalization, but we don't know what the law is going to turn into. But we
yeah,
are very close, one step ahead. And the good part of it is like, it's the first time in a history for us to be heard and listen. Right. We
mm-hmm.
just got a moratorium last year. We got a moratorium. So the
Congratulations.
moratorium was issued to sex workers, which is a wonderful, a great move actually.
Yeah,
Over 30 years, 3 decades advocating for decriminalization of sex work. It's the first time in a history they engage with us and give us and offer us this moratorium. We have a bill. Our bill was re-revised in
yeah,
2023, but now it's back on board again. The Department of
Awesome.
Justice is carrying that bill and the rewriting, and we went for public comment last year, November, end of
Yeah.
November. And then we also have a litigation in process. So
Yes.
the litigation, we know we're gonna appear on the May this year. It's either 2nd of May or 3rd of May. But we are facing challenges. The moralistic, the
Mm,
anti-human rights organization who
yeah.
always claim they know too much, they are into our case again.
Mm,
I can't understand why the people all the way from across the globe come
I
to
know.
South Africa and tell the women in South Africa how to use their body, how to
How to
live
live your
their
life.
lives. You do not understand our struggle. Do not speak of our
No.
struggle. So for
Yeah.
my traveling in New Zealand, I want to hear directed because there is also some assumptions around New Zealand. They say that
Yeah.
after the decriminalization, there is a high rate of trafficking. I've been speaking with my colleagues over the over Zoom and
Yeah.
online, but they say there is no such thing. For
No.
me coming down, I want to see with my two eyes, is it
Yes.
happening? So when I'm building my own arguments back
Yes.
home, I know how to build my argument, comparing what I saw than what I heard. You
Yes.
understand?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I believe on facts. So I want
Yeah.
to take the facts from New Zealand and come and use it for my argument so that the sex worker should be decriminalized and they also enjoy. You know what? The other thing we are aware is that the decriminalization, it won't gonna be a golden opportunity for sex workers, but it's a milestone move to
Yeah.
be recognized
It's huge.
by the laws is the most important thing. Rather than now, you are a criminal. You are not recognized by any law, by anything, and you are not protected. But once the sex work industry is decriminalized, there will be safety involved. There will be protection. There will be
Yeah.
also a part where we're going to work with the government officials to
Yeah.
identify the criminals because people they have seen this industry as a door opening for criminals, the drug lords, people to use and hide behind the sex work interest. So we
Yeah.
believe there will be a separating. Sex workers will be able to identify those cases and will work hand in hand with the government officials. We are not the
Definitely.
enemies of government officials.
No.
We are not the enemy with the
Allies.
policemen. We are allies, but the enemies, criminals, are out there.
Yes.
So how do we separate ourselves in that manner? So which
Mm,
is the most important thing that we have to do. The
definitely.
decriminalization will do that distinguish between the criminals and sex working. And then now let's deal with the reality. So for me coming in New Zealand, I'm coming to learn how do they
Yeah.
deal with the reality? How do they keep
Definitely.
the sex work organized and to show the people that we are the professional people in this industry?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got one more for you, Connie. This is the last, but definitely not the least, because I think it's an important note to end on, given the very real situation for funding, for resourcing, political support for women human rights defenders and for feminist organizations. So, um, actually, Sarah, this is Sarah's last question for Connie. So, sorry, I don't know if you wanted to ask the very last question before the closing remarks.
One second, please. Go
Sure.
ahead, Natasha.
So, what should funders, the media, and allies do differently starting now to support sex workers and their advocates?
Okay. For now, when I send my voice, is that as I mentioned, that the case now is on heat over 30 years advocating for those funders who funded us to push until today in our advocate strategies. And until today where we are. They did a great job for funding this work. It's more of protection and more also to gain access to the law. So as we stand right now, we are looking forward to do more campaigns, to do more advocacy work, direct actions, and involve in more awareness around our community across the globe, and also to engage with our other colleagues, sisters across the globe. But looking at the things at stand right now, the funding have become so problematic in our side that in November we have 150 staff, but we cut them now. We are seated with the 10 staff. Right. The other thing I didn't mention, I'm not here presenting only myself. I'm also presenting 137 organizations across the country who are also the part of this work. The civil society organization, the human rights and the feminists, and the individuals, the lawyers, the researchers across the country and across the globe. So this work, it's consumed a lot of effort to work, and it demands a lot of hands for us to achieve what we have started in the past 30 years. Therefore, the cut of the funding that happened last year, it have affected many people and many people and many employees. People lost their jobs. For us to achieve this work, 10 people from 150 and left 10 people. It's impossible for us to achieve it. But with the funding, we can possibly achieve it, because it's already 3/4 away for us to get 3/4 step to get close where we want to be today. Right. I'm not only just presenting 137 organizations, but I'm also being managed by the 4 strong sex workers movement in South Africa. Even if you Google, you will know them. I'm managed by the Sex Workers Education Advocates Task Force, and I'm also managed by the Sisonke, the movement of the sex workers, where the sex workers, they form their own movement and bring their voices, because we said nothing about us without us. So our voices matters. And then the Women Legal Center is a very powerful organization led by the women who are lawyers, very feminist, collective women, very powerful. And also we have got Sisonke Gender Justice, a very big nationally and regionally organization speaking on the gender issues. So these are the powerful organizations that they manage Asijiki. So we have come as a collective as well and work across through where I met Precious SAHR, the Southern African Alliance. So we have got our Southern African Alliance movement, and then we've got the African the region movement. So we have got 2 movements. All of them, they are behind us and they strongly support us. And then across the globe as well, we engage with our Bellini movement, we engage with our New Zealand movement, Australian movement. We are all over the world, in Finland and Thailand, and we understand Brazilian sex workers. We are all together and we support each other to make sure. And South Africa, to not disappoint people, we need the funding, because as South African, it's going to be the first country in a history, in an African country, in a history to decriminalize. So which means we're going to lead by an example. We are the leaders in this journey. So we cannot stop supporting one country that is one step ahead to achieve. We need more funding right now because we need to do campaigns. Our fellow colleagues in the region, in the global, we can also share the resources to make sure that they also do campaign. We're gonna do a collective campaigns with our fellows to make sure the lawmakers across the globe, they cannot mess up this time. We really need this decriminalization to happen. So we call out to the funders out there to say, this is your time to shine. For you as a funder and be part of this celebration, please bring that money to us. We'll make sure up and down in our postals, in our social, your name is there. Even it's not about the money. SHR, they didn't bring the money on board. They bring a fellow to take a lead. They invested in supporting the fellow to make sure this fellow should push the narrative. This fellow should make this work happen. So it's not only about, it's also capacitating the sex workers on the ground as well, which is most important.
Thank you so much for your words, Connie, and the platform let me back in and let Precious back in. So we still have some time for a few questions. So Precious from Zimbabwe, yeah, you're here, and we would really love to know more about your organization, your experience, and how does criminalization show up in the everyday realities of sex workers in your context. What feels most urgent for people to understand right now, and how does it affect access to justice when harm occurs? Thank you, and over to you if it works.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I hope everyone is hearing me well. Sorry for the network hiccups. So Springs of Life Zimbabwe is a sex worker-led organization that is operating in Zimbabwe in all 10 provinces. I'm happy to be part of this podcast so that I can share what is happening here in Zimbabwe. So criminalization in Zimbabwe is our everyday life. We face arbitrary arrests every day. You know, in Zimbabwe, sex work is criminalized. So in a way, they say it's not criminalized because it's not direct, but the aspects that are in our laws that they say the aspects that are associated with sex work are that's the ones that are being criminalized here in Zimbabwe. But our police officers here in Zimbabwe, they take advantage of those aspects to target the sex workers. So these aspects, at times, it will not be directly to say sex workers are going to be arrested if they do this, but they just put it in a context whereby they say, if you are to keep a brothel, like in 2015, we managed to remove the loitering law, but they brought in back to say that obstruction. So right now, the obstruction, they are now in the sex because they know that as a sex workers, when you're on your touchline, they did not specifically open up to say where exactly they are targeting the obstruction. If so, now they target the sex workers because they know sex workers, they're at touchline. They know sex workers, they're at public places, in bars, you know. So we are facing arrest every day, sex workers here in Zimbabwe, and it's arbitrary arrest. And also, our working spaces are very unsafe. We have unsafe working conditions here in Zimbabwe as sex workers. If police officers and the community itself, the community surrounding us, sees that this is a sex worker, at times they come and violate a sex worker. You know, GBV, direct GBV, they can beat you up as a sex worker. And also there are issues around accessing to health service, because someone believes that sex work is not work in their own context, in religion. When you visit a facility, if you want services, she might or he might bring it himself, not to say that clinically in the operation service delivery manual, it says that criminalize sex workers. No, but someone just brought in what they believe in to say, no, sex workers, we don't need sex workers here. And we don't have laws that protect us as sex workers here in Zimbabwe. The Patients Charter that we have here in Zimbabwe, it just says that you have a right to access services, health services. So as a sex worker, I don't bring in my work. I just want to access health services. But someone who believes that sex work is not work, someone who believes in his or her religion, he's saying that sex workers would want to see you here. They might call out names. Like in our own context, you can be called Mahure. You can be called Mahure. It's like someone who is doing sex work, not being paid. Someone who is bringing in diseases in the community. So they don't take you as a human being. They just see you as an animal. We are being treated like animals here. At times we might say animals are better because at times people are paying money to go and see animals in the parks. But here in Zim, at times you might not even access the medications that are there for everyone else. The fact that they know that you are a sex worker. So we are facing a lot of challenges here in Zimbabwe. So when it comes to reporting now, if you want to access justice, as a sex worker, like right now, I can give you an examples. Right now, today is a Monday. When we open from weekend, most sex workers, they run to come and report their cases so that we can help them with the human rights defenders to go and report the cases. Because all along before we brought in the aspect of having the human rights defenders to escort the sex workers to go and report cases. It's like if you go to report a case, like to say I'm raped, I was raped yesterday in the streets. They don't want to hear anything to do with rape because in their minds, they think that as a sex worker, we are looking for sex. So if you get raped, it means you have accessed sex that you were looking for. So it's not easy as a sex worker here in Zimbabwe to access justice. So now we are trying by all means to bring in other sex workers, train them to become the human rights defenders so that they can help a fellow sex worker to go and report. Like today, I have a case. A human rights defender did escort a sex worker to go and report. They did report a case. Now, the case was reported on Saturday, day before yesterday. So yesterday, when they were at a bar, they come across the person who raped a sex worker, and she phoned our human rights defender to say, I found that guy who raped me yesterday. So now the human rights defender, when he comes in, he can bring in police to say, let's go, there is a perpetrator here, let's go and get this perpetrator. To tell you, this perpetrator is not in the custody right now because the perpetrator had money. He gave the police officer whom we took from the police station to go and arrest this person. He gave him money. And this sex worker did not access justice. Though we are keeping on pushing to say justice for this sex worker. But you can see that it's not easy for us to access this, to access justice. When it comes to courts, at times they can tell you to go outside until you have a side talk with your perpetrator. No need for these stories, sex work stories. We don't want to hear such stories here. You know, it's not easy here in Zim. So at times you find yourself in between. That's why as Springs of Life right now, we are now pushing for the decriminalization of sex work here in Zimbabwe. We want the decrim here in Zimbabwe. If you check our pages, we are doing campaigns online. Though you don't want to hear us, but we are saying one day you would want to hear what is going on to us because we are facing challenges. We can't access health services. We can't live in communities peacefully because in communities, the community itself, if they know that this is a sex worker, do you know that even in the community, if there is a break, if the thieves break in the community, they will start to point the sex worker to say, this is where you can get your thieves if you want thieves. But at times we are just people who are living in the community. We are also family members. We also have families. We are just want to live in the community, just to associate with everyone, but they exclude us. There is stigma if they just know that you are a sex worker. We are facing so many challenges here in Zimbabwe. Right now, if you check, we launched the Lana Pakavia last week, and the sex workers social media wanted to know that what is happening in sex workers, and we did features as sex workers in Zimbabwe. I myself, I was on the forefront speaking on behalf of
Yeah, I think the internet connection is bad again. But maybe, Natasha, we could reconnect and join what Precious was talking about. Oh, you're back. Yes.
She's
Yes,
back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
So I was explaining about the Lana Pakavia that was launched last week. Our government received this Lana Pakavia because they want to benefit this donor funding that speaks about sex workers. So now it's like they love us because there is money that is coming to their coffers. You see, so I was telling the media last week to say, I'm happy today that our government is recognizing us and putting us on forefront, accepting the sex workers to access this service of Lama Pakavia as a priority, meaning the government knows that we are there. So the community stop harassing us because our government knows that we are there. I know I was provoking, but I wanted them to see it, to think outside the box. If they don't want us, they should not receive this money, because we are supposed to access this service, because they can tell you that today they are a priority. After 2-3 days after the launch, because they know that the world is seeing whatever that is happening, they will tell you, we don't want to see any sex worker here. So now we are pushing the narrative, pushing to the government to say, no, you said you know us and we are the first priority. Let happen. We are supposed to access these services. So now pushing for the decree in Zimbabwe. We have our position paper that we have crafted. Last year, 2025, we met with the parliamentarians and we have identified the allies, the parliamentarian allies who are supporting the decriminalization of sex work. And they said we are supposed to craft a position paper. Then we just finished the position paper. Now we submitted our position papers to our to the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. We want this to be a collective, and this position paper, it was not drafted by Springs of Life only. We are working with other sex worker-led organizations here in Zimbabwe, and in collaboration with other organizations like South Africa. They have a best practice because they did it, though they are not yet there, but we can see their steps. They are ahead us as Zimbabwe. We take them as a best practice to us. So we are expecting to submit our position paper this week for the decriminalization of sex work.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Precious. That was really great, and we managed it to have your voice. And thank you, Connie. Thank you, Natasha. And as we come to a close, I want to thank you, each and one of you, for the honesty, the clarity, and the care you brought into this space. And what stands out to me most is how consistently criminalization shows up, not as protection, but as a producer of harm too, not as neutrality, but as a system that decides whose lives and knowledge are considered credible. So if there is one thing I hope listeners can carry with them, it's that gender justice is not a technical problem, it's a power problem. And narratives matter because they shape whose harm is recognized and whose safety is treated as optional. So for anyone listening who works in funding, media, or policy, the responsibility doesn't stop at awareness. It extends on how you resource, whose voices you center, whose voices are at the table, and whether you're willing or not to be challenged by lived expertise and, for example, by our guest, Precious and Connie today. So thank you again for being part of this conversation. It doesn't end here. It's part of a much larger and necessary collective effort. And thank you, Natasha, so much for your mentorship and your guidance. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.